My alpha best friend needed a green card. I offered a paper marriage, rules intact, no feelings, just signatures. But his protective scents and burning kisses blurred every line. Now the positive test hidden in my drawer screams a truth his alpha instincts already know. Our fake vows just got very, very real. Episode 1. The Paper Promise. My life changed the day Leo's visa denial letter arrived. I smelled the sour panic on him before I even saw the paper trembling in his hand. We'd been roommates for 3 years, ever since we'd bonded as two broke college students, an overly pragmatic omega and a relentlessly optimistic alpha far from home. Now, the stark government seal on the envelope seemed to suck all the warmth from our sunny, cluttered apartment. "They're saying 30 days, Milo," he said, his voice rough. His usual scent of sun-warmed cedar and crisp citrus was buried under an ashen layer of shock. "Then I have to go back." Back meant a country on the brink of political collapse. Back meant leaving behind the tech career he'd built from scratch, the life he loved. Back meant leaving me. The thought sent a physical pang through my chest, sharp and unwelcome. He was my best friend, my anchor. The apartment would echo with a silence I couldn't bear. For a week, we lived in a fog of despair. Lawyers gave bleak advice, options dwindled. Then, one night over cold pizza, Leo looked at me, a dangerous, desperate hope flickering in his gold-flecked eyes. "There's one thing," he said slowly, setting his slice down. "One fast-track option." "Anything," I said instantly, wiping grease from my fingers. "You know I'll help with anything." He took a deep breath. "A spousal visa." I blinked. "Okay, but you're not seeing anyone, unless you've been hiding a secret omega from me." I tried for a joke, but it fell flat. "No," he said, his gaze holding mine with an intensity that made my breath hitch. "No, I'm not. But you are. My roommate. My best friend." The meaning slammed into me. The pizza turned to lead in my stomach. "Oh, you mean us?" "A paper marriage, Milo. Just signatures and a ceremony for the officials. We live as we do now, just with a document. We keep everything the same, platonic, no feelings, no complications. It would just be a legal arrangement to keep me here." No feelings. The rule was a barb, even though I knew it was necessary. Because I did have feelings, a tangled secret nest of them I'd kept carefully hidden for years. He was Leo, vibrant, brilliant, beautiful Leo, my alpha friend who treated me as an equal, who never dismissed me for being an omega, who made me feel safe and seen. And I was just Milo. To propose this was to ask me to build a cage around those feelings and throw away the key. But to say no was to lose him forever. I saw the fear in him, the humiliation of having to ask this enormous thing. I also saw my own future without him, colorless and quiet. The choice was an agony, but it wasn't a choice at all. "Okay," I whispered, the words scraping my throat raw. "Okay, Leo. I'll do it." The relief that washed over his face was a tidal wave, his scent sweetening with a gratitude so profound it felt like a physical touch. "Thank you," he breathed, reaching across the table. His hand covered mine, warm and calloused, a simple friendly gesture we'd done 100 times. This time, it burned. "I promise, Milo, nothing changes. We make the rules. No feelings, just friends helping friends." I nodded, unable to speak, pretending the heat from his skin wasn't searing my soul. The planning was a bizarre, clinical whirlwind. We became experts in fabricated timelines of our romance. We'll say we were friends first, then caught feelings a year ago, lived together for 6 months, decided to make it permanent, Leo dictated, pacing our living room like a general. We took smiling selfies to populate a courtship album, my heart hammering against my ribs every time he slung an arm around me for the camera. We applied for the license, the cold bureaucracy a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. The morning of the City Hall ceremony dawned clear and bright, a cruel parody of a real wedding day. I stood in my bedroom, staring at the simple, elegant dove-gray suit I'd bought. It felt like a costume. A soft knock came at my door. "Come in." Leo entered, and the air left the room. He was in a dark navy suit that hugged his broad shoulders and narrow waist, his usually unruly dark hair tamed. He looked devastating. His eyes swept over me, and for a second his usual composure faltered, his pupils flaring. "You look really good, Milo." "Thanks. You too." The words were inadequate. The space between us crackled with a new, terrifying energy. The no-feelings rule felt as fragile as glass. The ceremony was a 5-minute formality in a beige room with fluorescent lights. Our witnesses were Leo's pragmatic lawyer and my skeptical but supportive sister. But when the officiant said, "You may now exchange the rings," reality shifted. Leo took my hand. His touch was deliberate, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. The simple silver band felt heavy, significant, as he slid it onto my finger. "With this ring," he said, his voice low and solemn, not playing a part, but meaning it, "I take you as my husband." My vision blurred. I fumbled with his ring, my fingers trembling. When I finally got it on, I echoed the words, "With this ring, I take you as my husband." The title tasted foreign and forbidden on my tongue. Husband. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you married. You may seal your commitment with a kiss." The instruction hung in the air. We'd discussed this, a quick, closed-mouthed, friendly peck, just for the photo. Our eyes met, and a current, wild and electric, arced between us. The no-feelings rule shattered into a million pieces in that instant. Leo leaned in, his scent enveloping me. But this wasn't a peck. His hand came up to cradle my jaw, his touch achingly tender. His lips met mine, and it was soft at first, a question. Then something broke. The kiss deepened, turning slow, searching, and unbearably sweet. I heard a soft, wounded sound and realized it came from me. My hands fisted in the front of his suit jacket, pulling him closer. For a few eternal seconds, there was no deportation, no rules, no fear. There was only Leo, my best friend, kissing me like he was my everything. He was the one to pull back, his breath ragged against my lips, his forehead resting against mine. In his eyes I saw my own shock and wonder reflected, along with a dawning hungry possessiveness that made my knees weak. The officiant coughed. My sister gasped softly. We broke apart, the spell broken, but the world irrevocably changed. We signed the papers with trembling hands. The car ride home was thick with a silence that screamed. We walked into our apartment as husbands now, and the familiar space felt alien, charged. Leo shrugged off his suit jacket, his movements tense. He turned to me, his gaze traveling over my face, lingering on my lips that still tingled from his kiss. "Milo," he began, his alpha voice a low rumble that vibrated in my bones. "The rule," I whispered, clinging to the wreckage of our agreement like a life raft. "I know," he said, running a hand through his hair, "but that was for the papers," I finished for him, the lie tasting bitter. He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw tight. Finally he nodded, a slow, reluctant thing. "Right, for the papers." He took a step back, putting precious, awful distance between us. "Thank you, for today, for everything." He turned and walked to his bedroom door, but he paused, his hand on the knob, not looking back. "Good night," he said, the word loaded with everything we couldn't say. Husband. The door clicked shut. I stood alone in the living room, the weight of the ring on my finger a brand. The paper promise was signed, but the kiss had rewritten every rule. That night, lying alone in my bed, I could still feel the ghost of his lips on mine, and I knew with a terrifying, thrilling certainty nothing would ever be the same again. The line was blurred, and we were already falling. Episode 2: The Unraveling. The morning after the wedding, the silence in the apartment was a living thing. It was heavy, expectant, and saturated with the ghost of the kiss that had rewritten our world. I woke tangled in my sheets, the memory of Leo's lips on mine playing on a relentless, torturous loop. The silver band on my finger felt alien and heavy, a cold, beautiful lie. We moved around each other like planets whose orbits had catastrophically shifted. I was at the coffee machine when he emerged from his room, his hair still damp from a shower, wearing just a pair of low-slung sweatpants. My throat went dry. I'd seen him like this 100 times, 1,000, but now I was his husband. The word, even unspoken, painted the scene in a new, dangerous light. The defined lines of his chest, the trail of dark hair leading south. I jerked my gaze away, my face flaming. "Morning," he grunted, his voice sleep-roughened. He didn't meet my eyes as he reached around me for a mug, his bare arm brushing against my t-shirt. A spark shot through me, sharp and electric. He stilled for a fraction of a second, a subtle inhale telling me he'd felt it too. "Morning," I managed, my voice embarrassingly thin. The no-feelings rule was now a wall of cracked ice between us, and we were both terrified of taking the next step that would send us plunging into the frozen depths. We stuck to our scripts, just roommates, just paperwork. But the universe, it seemed, was a cruel choreographer. A pipe burst under the kitchen sink 2 days later, a chaotic gush of water that sent us scrambling. Leo, ever the pragmatist, dove to shut off the valve while I frantically sopped up the flood with towels. We were a frantic, soaking wet tangle of limbs on the linoleum when the immediate crisis passed. I was on my knees, he was crouched beside me, both of us breathing hard. Water darkened his gray t-shirt, making it cling to every ridge of his torso. "You're drenched," he muttered, his gaze scanning me. "So are you." Without thinking, he reached out and pushed a sopping lock of hair from my forehead. His fingers lingered against my skin, warm against the cold water. His eyes held mine, and the air grew thick, charged with the same energy that had ignited us at City Hall. His scent, usually a comforting blend of cedar and citrus, deepened, turning warmer, more possessive, an alpha's instinctive response. My own omega scent, usually a soft, clean linen, would be sweetening in answer, a traitorous reaction I couldn't control. I saw his nostrils flare, a dark, hungry look flickering in his eyes, before he snatched his hand back as if burned. "We should change," he said abruptly, standing up and putting distance between us. The incident left a new tension in its wake, a constant, low-grade hum. The domesticity of our arrangement became a sweet, exquisite torture. Cooking dinner together in our small kitchen meant navigating around each other in a careful dance, every accidental touch a jolt. Sharing the laundry, I'd find myself folding his t-shirts, bringing the soft cotton to my face without thinking, only to be enveloped by his scent. It felt intimate. It felt married. The blurring of lines reached its peak the following Friday. I'd had a brutal day at the design firm, a client from hell shredding my proposals to confetti. I came home feeling drained and brittle, my own scent probably sour with stress. Leo was on the couch coding, his glasses perched on his nose. He took one look at me and set his laptop aside. "Rough day?" he asked, his voice softening. "The worst," I sighed, dropping my bag and sagging against the doorframe. He stood and walked over to me. "Come here." Before I could process it, his hands were on my shoulders, turning me gently. Then his arms came around me from behind in a loose, secure hug, his chin resting on the top of my head. It was a friend's gesture, one he'd done before. But this time it was different. This time he dipped his head, and I felt his nose brush against the gland on the side of my neck, the source of an omega's scent. And then he scented me. It wasn't just a sniff, it was a deep, deliberate, grounding inhale, an alpha's instinctive way to calm and claim. A rumble started low in his chest, a pure, satisfied purr of comfort. Every muscle in my body turned to liquid heat. A soft, unbidden whimper escaped my lips as I melted back against him, my head lolling to give him better access. His arms tightened, pulling me flush against the solid wall of his chest. For a long, dizzying moment, there was only his warmth, his strength, the intoxicating woodsy citrus scent of him overwhelming my senses, washing the stress of the day away. He was marking me with his calm, and I was letting him. The realization of what we were doing, what he was doing, slammed into us both at once. He froze, the purr cutting off abruptly. His grip loosened, and he took a sharp step back, releasing me as if I'd scalded him. I stumbled forward, suddenly cold without his heat, my skin screaming at the loss of contact. I turned to face him. He looked wrecked, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and raw, unconcealed desire. "Leo," I breathed, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I'm sorry," he said, the words ragged. "That was instinct. I didn't mean to cross a line." But his gaze dropped to my lips, betraying his words. The line wasn't just crossed, it was obliterated, erased by the profound intimacy of what he'd just done. The air between us crackled, thick with everything unsaid, every forbidden feeling now laid bare by that one primal act. "It's okay," I whispered, though it wasn't. Nothing was okay. We were a lit fuse in a room full of dynamite. That night, the separate bedrooms felt like a cruel joke. My bed was too big, too cold, too empty. I stared at the ceiling, my body still humming from his touch, my neck still tingling where his nose had pressed. I could hear him shifting restlessly in his room down the hall, a muffled thump against the wall as if he'd punched his pillow in frustration. The paper marriage felt like a contract, but this, the shared domestic chaos, the protective sense, the way my soul quieted in his arms, this felt like a vow. The no feelings rule was a distant, laughable memory. We were lying to the government, but worse, we were lying to ourselves. We were husband and husband in every way but one. And as I lay there, aching and awake, I knew with a desperate certainty that the last fragile barrier between us wouldn't survive the storm that was coming. The unraveling had begun, and there was no going back. Episode 3, The Perfect Storm. The week after the scenting was a study in exquisite, unbearable tension. We were two magnets forcibly held apart, the air between us vibrating with the strain. Every glance was loaded, every casual word a double entendre. I found myself memorizing the new heated layers of his scent, my omega instincts preening at the possessive, protective notes that now lingered around him, notes meant for me. The catalyst for our downfall arrived in the form of a glittering invocation clutched in my sister's triumphant hand. "Lena's engagement party, black tie, and you have to bring that gorgeous new husband of yours," she'd said, her eyes sharp with curiosity she pretended was casual. It was our first public test as a married couple, and there was no refusing. The night of the party, the tension morphed into something else, a charged, collaborative energy. We dressed in the silence of our separate rooms, but when I walked out, struggling with my bow tie, Leo was waiting in the living room. He looked up, and the breath left his lungs in a soft, audible rush. I'd chosen a deep emerald suit that made my eyes look darker, my skin paler. "Let me," he said, his voice gravelly. He stepped close, his fingers deft and sure as they took over the silk of my tie. His knuckles brushed my throat with every movement. I was hyper-aware of his every breath, the faint, clean smell of his cologne, the intense focus in his downturned eyes. His warmth radiated against me. "There," he murmured, his hands smoothing the finished bow tie, lingering for a heartbeat too long on my chest. Perfect. The party was a whirl of champagne flutes and probing smiles. We played our parts with a convincing, terrifying ease. His hand was a constant, warm weight on the small of my back, a claiming touch that felt less like acting with every passing minute. He introduced me as my husband Milo, with a steadiness that made my knees weak. We told our fabricated love story, and somewhere between the canapés and the cocktail chatter, the lies began to feel like wishes. Then the band shifted to a slow, soulful song. The dance floor beckoned, a sea of swaying couples. Lena, my sister, her eyes gleaming, practically pushed us toward it. "Go on, don't be boring newlyweds." We had no escape. Leo's hand slid from my back to take mine, his touch firm. He led me into the soft light, and then his other arm came around my waist, pulling me close. Not the careful distance of acquaintances, but the intimate press of lovers. My body aligned with his instinctively, chest to chest, hip to hip. The world, the party, the lies, all of it shrunk down to the space where we touched. He was solid and real, and I let myself melt into him, my head finding the perfect resting place against his shoulder. His scent enveloped me, that now familiar cedar and citrus, but beneath it was something new, something dark and sweet and solely for me. His lips brushed my shell of the ear, his breath a warm caress as he murmured, just for me to hear, "You're doing amazing, my husband." My husband. The words weren't part of the script. They were a confession, a promise, a secret shared in the dim light. A shiver that had nothing to do with cold raced down my spine. My fingers tightened on his shoulder. "This doesn't feel like pretending anymore, Leo," I whispered into the fine wool of his suit, the words torn from me. His hand splayed wider on my back, pressing me even closer. I could feel the rapid, steady beat of his heart against my own. "I know," he breathed into my hair, his voice thick. "God, Milo, I know." We swayed like that, lost in each other for the rest of the song and into the next. Time lost meaning. There was only the music, the heat of him, and the terrifying, exhilarating realization that the dam we'd built was cracking beyond repair. The car ride home was a silent, pressurized chamber. The air was thick with everything we'd acknowledged on that dance floor. The sexual tension was a live wire sparking between us in the confined space. I could feel his gaze on me like a physical touch, searing in the intermittent streetlight. We stumbled into our dark apartment, the door clicking shut behind us like the cocking of a gun. The polite facade of the evening shattered. We stood facing each other in the entryway, the only light coming from the street lamp outside, painting stripes across the floor and over his tense form. "Milo." His voice was raw, a low alpha rumble that vibrated in my very bones. "The rule," I tried, one last feeble attempt to grasp the splintering remains of our agreement. "To hell with the rule," he growled, closing the distance between us in one stride. He didn't kiss me gently. This was no City Hall performance. This was a claiming. His mouth crashed down on mine, hungry and desperate and devastatingly sincere. I gasped, and he took the opportunity to deepen the kiss, his tongue sweeping in, tasting me. A wildfire ignited in my veins. My hands flew to his hair, tangling in the dark strands, pulling him closer. He walked me back until my shoulders hit the wall, his body caging me in, all hard muscle and fierce, trembling need. His lips left mine to trail burning kisses down my jaw, to my neck, to that sensitive gland he'd scented just days before. He laved it with his tongue, then nipped gently, a possessive gesture that made me cry out, my legs buckling. He caught me, his arms like steel bands. "Leo," I panted, arching into him. "We can't, we shouldn't." He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes, his own blazing with a possessive fire that stole my breath. "Tell me to stop," he challenged, his voice a dark, beautiful rasp. "Tell me this isn't what you've wanted, what we've wanted." I couldn't. I wouldn't. The last of my resistance crumbled to dust. I answered by surging up to reclaim his lips, my actions speaking the truth my voice refused to utter. That night, the separate beds remained empty. In his room, in his bed, the no feelings rule was incinerated in the heat of skin on skin, in the poetry of whispered names and broken sighs. It wasn't just sex, it was a revelation. It was a collision of years of hidden longing, a desperate, beautiful communication that needed no words. He was tender and fierce, worshipful and possessive, and when he knotted us together, the world fractured and remade itself around that perfect, blinding point of connection. After, wrapped in a tangle of limbs and sweat-damp sheets, with his scent now irrevocably mingled with mine, he held me so tight I could barely breathe. His lips were pressed to my sweat-damp temple. "This changes everything," I whispered into the darkness, the reality a chilling, thrilling wave. He shifted, tilting my chin up so I had to meet his eyes, still blazing in the dark. "No," he said, his thumb stroking my cheek. "This just makes it real. This was always the truth, Milo. The papers, the party, this is the only part that wasn't a lie." We fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, the future a terrifying, open question. But as dawn's first light began to paint the room gray, I felt him stir, press a soft kiss to my shoulder, and murmur the words that sealed our fate, words that were both a comfort and a curse. "It won't change anything between us, I promise. We're still us." But as I lay listening to his breathing even out, feeling the delicious ache in my body, I knew with a sinking, soaring certainty that he was wrong. Everything had changed. The storm had come, and we were forever caught in its beautiful, devastating aftermath. Episode 4, The Bitter Secret. In the golden, hazy days that followed that night, our apartment became a secret world. The no feelings rule was a forgotten ghost, laughed at in the soft light of morning as Leo's lips traced the curve of my shoulder. We didn't talk about the future or the legalities. We existed in a perfect, stolen present. Mornings began with his mouth on mine, slow and sleep-warm. Evenings ended pangled on his couch or mine, learning the maps of each other's bodies with a reverence that left me breathless. His scent was on my skin, in my sheets, a permanent, comforting claim. My omega instincts, long suppressed, sang in constant, quiet joy. He was an attentive, fiercely affectionate alpha, always touching, a hand on my lower back as he passed, an arm around my waist as we cooked, his nose nuzzling my neck for a quick grounding scent. It was everything I'd ever secretly ached for. It felt real. Until, 3 weeks into our beautiful delusion, my body betrayed me. It started with a wave of nausea so sudden and violent I had to bolt from a shared breakfast of his perfectly scrambled eggs, barely making it to the bathroom. I blamed a stomach bug, but the nausea didn't pass. It lingered, a queasy companion every morning. Then came the exhaustion, a bone-deep weariness that had me falling asleep on the couch at 8 p.m., Leo carrying me to bed with a soft, worried chuckle. My senses went haywire. The smell of his strong coffee, once comforting, now made me gag. And my scent, it began to change. I could smell it on myself, a richer, creamier, undeniably sweeter note woven through my usual linen essence, the scent of an omega whose biology had been fundamentally altered. The realization was a cold, clinical shock, cutting through the warm haze of our new intimacy. I stood in a pharmacy aisle, staring at the boxes with a detached horror. The math was undeniable. That first desperate night, lost in the storm of him, we'd been reckless. We'd been everything but careful. The two pink lines appeared in the sterile brightness of our bathroom with a silent, definitive finality. A positive pregnancy test. My knees gave out. I sank to the cool tile floor, the plastic stick clattering from my fingers. A wild, primal joy surged for one dizzying second. A child. Our child. Leo's and mine. Then the ice water of reality doused it. This was the ultimate complication. Our marriage was a transaction, a fragile legal construct to keep him in the country. A baby was a lifelong bond, a screaming, beautiful truth that would make our lie undeniable. What if he felt trapped? What if the pressure, the sheer permanence of it, shattered the delicate, real thing growing between us? What if he saw it as a manipulation, an Omega's trick to cement the deal? The fear was a viper in my chest, coiling tight. I hid the test at the bottom of my locked desk drawer, a radioactive secret. I became an actor in a new, terrible play. I forced down toast to combat the morning sickness when he was watching. I doused myself in unscented soap and lotion, trying to mask the sweetening of my scent. I wore high-collared shirts and avoided his more intimate nuzzling, flinching away from the very touch I craved. Leo noticed, of course. Alphas notice everything. "You're tired lately, my heart," he murmured one evening, his fingers stroking through my hair as I pretended to read. The new endearment, spoken so easily, was a dagger of guilt. "Just a busy week," I lied, my voice too bright. He went still behind me. Then I felt him lean in, a slow, deliberate inhale at the junction of my neck and shoulder. A low, confused rumble sounded in his chest. "You smell different," he said, his voice edged with a possessive curiosity that made my blood run cold. I jerked away, a frantic bird-like movement. "New soap," I chirped, the lie pathetic. "That lavender stuff you bought, it's strong." His eyes, dark and searching, held mine. He didn't believe me. He knew my scent like he knew his own, and this change was fundamental. He said nothing, but a quiet, watchful intensity settled over him. The breaking point came in the kitchen. He was making his infamous spicy stir-fry, the aroma of chili and garlic usually heaven. Now it was a toxic cloud. The nausea rose swift and unconquerable. My hand flew to my mouth and I stumbled toward the sink, gagging. He was at my side in an instant, his hand on my back. "Milo, what's wrong?" I waved him off, gulping air. "Too spicy, just went down wrong." He turned off the stove. The silence was profound. He moved to stand in front of me, caging me against the counter. His gaze was an alpha's gaze now, penetrating, concerned, tinged with a rising protective suspicion. He leaned in again, his nose skimming the air by my temple, down to my neck. I froze, a rabbit before a wolf. "It's not the soap," he stated, his voice a low, thrilling vibration. "And it's not the food." His eyes dropped to my still flat stomach, then back to my face, a dawning, earth-shattering comprehension beginning to blaze in their golden depths. "Your scent, Milo, it's sweeter. It's—" He trailed off, the unspoken word hanging between us, colossal and terrifying. Pure animal panic seized me. I ducked under his arm, putting the kitchen island between us. "It's nothing. I'm just run down, maybe a hormone thing. Don't be ridiculous, Leo." The hurt that flashed across his face was worse than anger. I'd called him ridiculous. I'd dismissed his alpha senses, the very instincts that were now screaming the truth at him. His jaw tightened. "You're lying to me," he said, the words flat, final. "After everything, you're lying." He didn't push. He just looked at me, a world of confusion and betrayal in his eyes, then turned and walked out of the kitchen. The apartment felt colder, emptier than it ever had before our wedding. Alone, I slid to the floor, my hands pressed to my abdomen where our secret, our miracle, our catastrophe was quietly growing. The positive test was a hidden star, its light a terrifying beacon. He was starting to see its glow, and I was running out of places to hide. The ache to tell him, to fall into his arms and share the seismic truth was a physical pain, but the fear of watching the love in his eyes harden into obligation, or worse, resentment, was stronger. I had to protect this fragile new life, and in doing so, I was breaking the very heart that had created it. The paper marriage had been a simple lie. This, the life growing inside me and the wall of silence I was building, felt like a betrayal. And as his distant, wounded scent drifted down the hall, I knew the clock was ticking. The truth, like my changing body, could not be hidden forever. Episode 5. The Only Truth. The Cold War in our own home lasted 3 agonizing days. Leo moved through the apartment like a ghost, his scent tinged with confusion and a deep, wounded alpha hurt. He didn't ask again, but his eyes followed me, a constant, silent question that echoed in the space between us. The sweetening of my scent was now a scream in the quiet, a truth we were both pretending not to hear. The breaking point was ironically domestic. I was clumsily attempting to make tea, my hands trembling, when a wave of dizziness hit me. The world tilted. The mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the tile in an explosion of ceramic. Before the first piece had even settled, Leo was there. He didn't ask if I was okay. He moved with a predator's speed, his arms sweeping me up and away from the debris, cradling me against his chest. A low, distressed growl rumbled through him. "Enough, Milo," he breathed into my hair, his voice ragged. "This ends now." He carried me not to the couch, but into his bedroom, laying me down on the rumpled sheets that still smelled of us, of passion and sleep. He didn't let go. He knelt beside the bed, his hands framing my face, forcing me to look at him. His gaze was a storm, fear, anger, and a ferocious, unwavering concern. "You're pale, you're sick, you're hiding from me," he stated, each word a hammer blow. "And you smell like heaven and fear, and it is killing me." His thumb stroked my cheek, his touch devastatingly tender against the steel in his voice. "Tell me, whatever it is, tell me." The dam inside me cracked. Tears, hot and relentless, spilled over. I couldn't carry it alone anymore. The weight of the secret and the weight of wanting him was crushing my soul. "The drawer," I sobbed, the words barely intelligible. "The key is in the blue bowl." He searched my face for another second, then pressed a swift, hard kiss to my forehead. He was gone for less than a minute. When he returned, the small white plastic stick was clutched in his hand. He stood in the doorway, his broad shoulders filling the frame, looking from the test to me and back again. The world stopped. His expression was unreadable. Then a tremor went through him, a single seismic shock. He crossed the room in 2 strides, sinking back to his knees beside the bed. He didn't look at the test again. He only looked at me, his eyes wide, blazing with an emotion so raw it stole the air from my lungs. "Milo," he whispered, my name a prayer, a plea. "I'm sorry," I choked out, the fear finally winning. "I was so scared it would change things, that you'd feel trapped, that you'd think I did this to lock you into the deal. I'm so sorry, Leo." His mouth captured mine, swallowing the frantic words in a kiss that was nothing like the others. It was a seal, a vow. It was soft and deep, and tasted of salt from my tears and the profound, shocking wonder on his lips. When he pulled back, he was breathing hard, his forehead resting against mine. "You are a fool," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "The most beautiful, brilliant fool." He took my hand, placing it over his heart, where it hammered against his ribs. "Do you feel that? That is not for a green card. That is for you. It has only ever been for you." He took the positive test, setting it carefully on the nightstand, like the most precious artifact. Then he placed his large, warm hand over my still flat stomach. The gesture was so possessive, so reverent, a fresh sob ripped from my throat. "This," he said, his alpha voice dropping to a husky, awed register that vibrated through my very core. "This is the only real thing that's ever happened to me. This is our truth. The papers were the lie, Milo. This, you, us, this life we made, this is my only truth." He leaned down then and pressed his lips to my abdomen, a kiss of such stunning tenderness that my entire being shook. Then he moved up my body, kissing my hip bone, the hollow of my stomach, the frantic pulse at my throat, each kiss a brand, a promise. "My husband," he murmured against my skin, the title now imbued with its full, profound meaning. "My Omega, the father of my child." He finally reclaimed my lips, the kiss turning from tender to hungry, a slow, sensual burn that promised forever. Mine. This time there was no fear, no hidden rules. There was only the shocking, beautiful reality. His hands and lips worshipped my changing body with a new, focused intensity, as if learning a sacred geography. His scent enveloped me, pure cedar and sun and fierce, unshakable joy, mingling with my own sweetened scent until they were inseparable. When we joined, it was slower, deeper, a profound claiming and surrender that had us both trembling on the edge of tears and ecstasy. After, wrapped in him, with his hand splayed protectively over my stomach, the future finally snapped into focus, not as a threat, but as a dazzling shared dream. The next morning, he made me bland toast and watched me eat every bite with satisfied alpha eyes. Then he took my left hand where my silver ring sat and pulled a small black velvet box from his pocket. "I bought this the day after our real wedding," he said, his voice rough. He opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant band of woven gold and platinum meant to sit alongside my first ring. "I was too scared to give it to you. I was still pretending." He slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly, a warm, solid weight, a real ring for a real vow. "The deal was no feelings," he said, lacing his fingers through mine, both rings glinting in the morning light. "But the deal is over. This is the new deal. Everything, every feeling, every day, the three of us." He kissed me then, soft and sure, and for the first time since I'd seen those two pink lines, I felt no dizziness, no fear, only a steady, soaring certainty. The paper marriage kept him in the country, but this, the baby, the rings, the man holding me as if he were his entire world, this was what finally brought him home. Epilogue. 5 years later, our living room is a chaos of discarded toys and toddler laughter. Our daughter, with Leo's eyes and my stubbornness, chases a giggling puppy. The framed green card and our original marriage license hang on the wall, now just a funny story we tell, the prologue. Next to them hangs our real wedding photo, taken in a sun-drenched field, me visibly pregnant, Leo's arms wrapped possessively around us both. He still scents me every morning, a ritual of home. The paper promise kept him here, but this messy, loud, perfect love built our forever. He's my husband, for real. And that's the story of how a paper promise became a lifetime of messy, beautiful reality. From whispered rules to nursery rhymes, their journey proves that sometimes the greatest loves are built on unexpected foundations. Thank you for listening to The Paper Promise. If this story of blurred lines and destined love touched your heart, please follow, rate, and review wherever you listen. It helps new listeners find their next favorite story. Now, we'd love to know, in your own life, when has a simple agreement or a platonic friendship unexpectedly turned into something far deeper? Share your thoughts with us. Until next time.